What's going on? Dr. Frank here, the founder of Addiction Mindset Recovery Coaching Programs. And in today's brief video, I want to take some time and discuss addiction as a model of disease versus addiction as a model of choice. Here at Addiction Mindset Recovery Coaching, we help people quit nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content. So be sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy today's video. Now, before you shred me apart in the comments and decide that you already don't like me based on the title, hear me out and then have a discussion with me in the comments following the video because I want to know your opinion on this. So when I think of addiction as a disease, it makes me ask myself, where did this model come from and what does it mean? What does that mean for society today as a whole? So the first thing that I discovered was this. There's a lot of money in treating disease. There's a lot of money that moves in big medicine and in big pharma. So if addiction is a disease, we're going to approach that traditionally from a medical standpoint. And that involves the prescription of pharmaceutical drugs or over-the-counter substances. For example, if you're trying to quit nicotine and you take a traditional medical approach, you're going to be placed on Nicorette or nicotine replacement therapy patches. Now, although that's a great form of harm reduction, you're still stuck in the cycle of nicotine addiction. You're still stuck in the nicotine trap, and they're still making big money off of you. Now, we could say the same things for rehab facilities, which are, again, great places, absolutely nothing wrong with that, but they're moving $30,000, $60,000, $90,000 a month treating addiction as a disease. So that's thing number one. Keep in mind, there's big money behind treating something as disease when it comes to medicine. Issue number two, and that's not really an issue of mine, that's just something I've noticed. Issue number two, telling people addiction is a disease strips them of their ability to make a choice, largely. Remember, even in disease, we still do have some ability to make choices. What doctors we see, what medications we'll take. Will you approach this from a naturopathic and homeopathic standpoint or a traditional Western medicine standpoint? You can still make choices. But largely, if we're told we have a disease, we're stripped of our ability to make a choice. And I think that's extremely demotivating. And it really does nothing to empower the patient or the person struggling with active addiction if we're telling them there's a disease and this isn't something that they can control. I think that's very, very, very dangerous. So that's one of the main problems that I have viewing addiction as a disease. When I was in active addiction, my brain actually manipulated that statement. Frank, you have a disease. You can't control this. There's nothing you can do. It is what it is. I actually use that to further justify my use of nicotine, THC, adult media content, binge drinking, whatever the problem was at the time. And maybe that's something that you do too without even realizing it. So that's addiction as a disease model, the negatives that I see. Now, on a more positive note, I will say this. There are obviously physiological changes that occur inside the human brain when you have an addiction. Dopamine is released, serotonin is released, and that behavior is reinforced because of those chemical changes that occur in the brain. But here's the thing. There's a problem with that. Do we call that a disease, or do we call that an extreme form of learning? I'm going to put a link in the description below to an addiction recovery coach named Cody who runs the Beyond Sober program. And he often talks about addiction as something that we taught ourselves. And he says, you got very, very, very good at teaching yourself how to be really good at active addiction. This is a learning process, and you became an expert. You've proven that to everyone. Now, you got to stop doing that. So I'm going to put his information below. But I agree with this model. I agree with this standpoint. Because if we're going to refer to addiction as a disease, then is learning new activities, learning new behaviors, is that also a disease? Because that's what addiction does. It trains us into a behavior. It trains us into a habit. It trains us into a routine. And then we continually make choices to reinforce that behavior, to reinforce that routine, to reinforce those changes that occurred, those new pathways that occurred in our brain to further promote addiction. So do we want to say that those physiological changes are part of a disease process, or would we rather say, would it be more promising to say that those neurological changes are part of an extreme version of learning, an extreme version of self-education? Now, none of us ever planned on getting addicted. The first time I smoked weed, I didn't plan on smoking weed until I made myself sick. I didn't plan on using nicotine until I put myself at serious health risks. Addiction is extremely insidious. And I think there becomes a problem with that. Because if I'm going to tell you that addiction is a choice and it's not a disease, then you're left with a very scary and very damaging thought. And that thought is, what the hell is wrong with me? Why would I be making this choice day in and day out to stay addicted? Why would I put my family through this? Why would I put my relationships through this? Why would I put my finances through this? Why would I make this choice? What's wrong with me? That's the scary thing when we talk about addiction as a choice. And I have 3 thoughts on that. I think there's 3 reasons why you wind up in the situation you're in. Reason number 1, because you're making this choice because you're still under the facade, the lie, that this addiction is providing you some type of relief, that this addiction is providing you some type of benefit. And that simply isn't true. If you're at the point that I'm talking about an active addiction, there truly is no benefit at this point. And you have yet to realize that, or you have yet to see that. That's reason number 1 why I think you would continue to do this to yourself. Reason number 2 is very simple. Because you haven't made new choices. You haven't given yourself permission to wake up and do something different today, tomorrow, the next day, next week, next year. You haven't given yourself permission to let go and start a new routine. You haven't given yourself permission to see what's on the other side of that coin. And like Cody would say in his Beyond Sober programs, I don't blame you. You've gotten really, really freaking good at giving yourself permission to do this. You've gotten really good at training these behaviors. So I would challenge you, maybe right now after this video, maybe tomorrow is the day where you give yourself permission to make new choices. Because I promise you, you are 100% capable of that. You deserve that. You yourself, you deserve to do that for yourself, okay? And the more you do that, the better you're going to become at it, I promise. Reason number 3, there's nothing wrong with you. You started this addiction because maybe initially it did make you feel better. I'm not going to lie. Drugs can make a person feel good. Being high can feel good. Okay. And maybe at that time in your life, maybe it was a good choice, but then it became an addiction and now it's a bad choice. Now there's negative consequences. And now you continually use this substance to avoid the pain of withdrawals. So is there anything wrong with you for wanting to avoid pain and wanting to feel good? Is that a disease? Is that an illness? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. What it is it's a facade. It's a lie created by addiction. It's a false promise. And it trained you into this negative mindset loop that you're stuck in. All you have to do is start to see this addiction and this choice for what it is. This choice isn't leading to an avoidance of pain. This choice is no longer leading to feelings of pleasure. It's simply prolonging the inevitable suffering of withdrawals. And you are suffering. You are in pain. That's why you're on my channel. You can make different choices today. You can make different choices tomorrow to pull yourself out of this. And yes, By all means, get support, get help, get whatever it is you need, but understand this is your decision. Now, for those of you sitting there saying, "Oh my God, this is a lot to take in," I want to tell you something. I think this is a significantly more positive way to view addiction because it puts you in control. Addiction is a lack of control. We are something we perceive that we can no longer control, that we don't have control over. And that feeling is what keeps us stuck in the active grips of addiction. So I'm telling you right now, you have the ability to take back control. You are in the driver's seat. And I think that model is significantly more empowering than the model of you have a disease, you're sick, you're not capable of. This isn't up to you. I would rather go through life as viewing myself having extreme levels of control over situations. I want things to happen because of me, not to me, okay? I think life is much happier when you can come at it from that angle versus the angle of things are constantly happening to me. Because when things are constantly happening to you, you never have a true sense of control. And that's exactly how addiction wants you to feel. And I can't help but wonder, is that also how medicine, big pharma, all these things that have their hands on addiction, that are trying to get their hands on your money, your work, is that how they want you to feel? Because there's not a lot of money in the model I talk about. I work with people. I charge people to work with them. Yes, they don't talk to me a heck of a lot because a lot of them get better eventually once they realize it's up to them to do it. It's up to them to do the work. So I just want to throw that out there. Now, there's nothing wrong. I do want to say this. Some people, once they get to that point, they have some deep work to do. And there's nothing wrong with seeing a therapist and talking through that and learning techniques on how to manage those emotions and all these feelings. Please, by all means, get the help that you need to get. Please get professional help. What if you don't get addicted to the drug? What if you're addicted to the experience? And what if the choices that you make can dramatically alter your experience? For example, maybe you were bored, really, really bored at one point in your life. You weren't pursuing anything. You didn't have any goals. You really didn't have a lot going on. So you decided to start smoking a lot of weed. You decided to start doing some drugs, drinking, whatever it may be. And now that experience has changed. That experience has enhanced. You're no longer bored. So you got used to a feeling. You got addicted to a feeling of some level of excitement. You got addicted to no longer feeling bored. Okay? Now, what if you could make different choices, though, day to day, that's going to prevent you from being in a situation where you're bored? Maybe you got addicted to things because of chronic pain, and you got addicted to the feeling of having less pain, something that I would never blame you or judge you for getting addicted to. But what if there's other choices that you could have made outside of substance abuse that would lead to less pain? Because remember, you're still experiencing pain if you're in active addiction. You just might not realize that because the thing that's causing you the pain, you are still possibly under the impression that it's the solution to your pain. It's seen through that facade that addiction creates. Does that make sense? Because if we view addiction as getting addicted to an experience, now we're able to say, wait a minute, how can I go create better experiences for myself? What things, what hobbies, what goals, what ambitions, what relationships, what things can I immerse myself in to give myself new experiences? What different choices can I make today or tomorrow or next week to alter my experience? Very interesting point of view. I want to say this. Stripping humans of their ability to choose is damaging. Giving them back the power of their own volition is essential for recovery. I truly believe that. And for me personally, until I started to view recovery and addiction as a series of choices, as a series of experiences, I continued to struggle because I always had an excuse as to why I was staying addicted. I wonder if any of this relates to you guys. Again, I didn't bash addiction as a disease in this model. I simply provided you guys with my insight and I think a different point of view. And hopefully for some of you guys, you connect with this and it helps you in your recovery process. And, it's funny too, even as far as recovery goes, in my opinion, recovery from substance use addiction is you're going through the withdrawals, and that's your recovery. You get better, right? You get better. You feel better. That's your recovery. Now the rest is your sobriety. The rest is your journey, your new experiences, your new choices. That's recovery, in my opinion. There's a finite end to it when the withdrawals end. And then there's a journey that you go on. Whether you want to recall recovery, sobriety, or just a series of new life experiences is up to you. But at that point, you are no longer an addict. You are no longer addicted. You are onto something new in your life. You are on to building a life that no longer has room for these negative choices, because hopefully your life is just full of positive things. I hope this video helps you guys out. It was kind of a challenging video to make. Let me know in the comments, do you agree with me or do you disagree? Follow me into the next video where I talk a little bit about mental health and THC addiction. I'll see you guys there.